Okay. All right, we're going to go very quickly and we're going to show some of the tools that we've been building to visualize DDPs or data download packages, which are a form of data donation that we're developing as part of the AIO. So just very quickly, the two of us are up here today, but this is really part of an effort of many, many more people and institutions and organizations. So major thank you to all of our colleagues and partners. And just as a quick refresher, what are DDPs? I mentioned them earlier this morning, but if you weren't there, DDPs are data download packages. This is a form of personal data archive that users can download from digital platforms. That could include social media platforms, it could include streaming platforms, it could include things like Uber or Amazon. And they really emerge from regulation, particularly in Europe, but also in places like California, where there's new regulatory instruments that mandate that users are required to have access to their own personal information, and that platforms must provide this information to the user on request. Now, you can see a wide range of the different kinds of information that DDPs can contain. The key thing to note here is that it's not consistent. It really varies across platforms as to what is included in these DDPs, but that could include things like account information, activity logs, advertising data. They're usually provided to users as a zip file. Users generally go to the platform somewhere in their account settings or in their privacy settings and can request a copy of this data. That's transferred to them via email, usually like a link. So they get that email after making the request. You click the link and it's downloaded onto your computer. And inside that zip file is a mix of different kind of file formats. This could be JSON, HTML files, CSV, but also many, many more kinds of multimedia formats like audio, video, and images. So when we're thinking about working with DDP data as a research object, it has a lot of promise for researchers. This is a relatively emerging method in digital media research. And it's a particularly novel kind of data set, right? That individuals are getting data about their practices on platforms. It is what we can call vertical data. So instead of horizontally cutting across, let's say, a hashtag, it's vertically looking at one single user. And it's a retrospective kind of history of this user's engagement with a particular platform. So rather than doing a, let's say, tracking study where users might adapt their behavior after the study starts, DDPs are a history. So it is your true engagement with that platform, your true history. But this also comes with a lot of caveats, mainly the idea that DDPs include sensitive and personal data. It's a range of file types. This can be really unwieldy to work with. And DDPs are quite unstable as an object. That's because they're created by the platforms themselves. So Facebook or YouTube gets to decide what's actually contained in that DDP file, the sort of data that is being given to the user, and the structure that they provide the data within. So if you were doing this kind of research manually, it could be very laborious to look at all of these data points that's provided within these formats. You can see an example of how Spotify here explains the DDPs and its contents to its participants. So what we've been trying to do with our data donation platform is develop an end-to-end workflow for researchers to collect and analyze data download packages rather than having to work with these large and inconsistent files manually. So Michael is going to show us a little bit about what we've been building.
Thanks so much, Lauren. So when we're talking about DDPs, just to sort of recap, we're talking about files coming from our social media platforms, and they're often provided to the user as a zip file. But that particular zip file, it contains many, many small files within, and they're often of differing sort of file formats. So that really makes them quite challenging to work with, particularly for people who don't come sort of from a computational background. So in the AIO, what we've been building sort of quite recently are some what we're calling viewers or platform visualizers, which really target particular platforms. So currently we have two. We have one for Instagram and one for YouTube. And we've also been building here on the right on the slide what we call sort of the data visualizer. It's sort of part of our work package called the lab workspace, which is essentially designed for everything else. It sort of has a best attempt at trying to sort of visualize and understand the data going in. So this data visualizer, it accepts a wide variety of file types, JSON, CSV, Parquet, a few others as well. And we programmatically sort of seek to harmonize these particular types of data, so it sort of makes it easier for the researcher to explore. So I'm going to try and attempt now a live demo here. It's always a bit risky, but maybe if I bring this up in a new tab. So the first one I'd like to sort of show you is our YouTube viewer. So this is what the user would see if they came here and they'll be able to upload their own one. For all of our viewers, we also are providing some sample files. Most of these have been synthetically generated, so they're not sort of actually showing our participants' data. So here, this is one where we're using the sample files, and you can see we have basically two samples from two notional participants. And this is sort of trying to surface some of the information which is sort of contained in all these sort of many little files within the DDP. So you can see we have a bit of an overview where we're sort of putting here, well, this account's been around for quite a while. It's been on YouTube for about 11 years, this particular participant. They've seen a lot of videos, about 23,000. They followed 29 subscribers. Then we try and surface some of the recently watched videos that the participant has seen. So you can see these are all links, so I can actually click on these and go straight to the particular YouTube video. In this next sort of module, we're looking at the video categories. This is an example of where we're actually doing some data enrichment. So the DDP itself, it doesn't actually contain the video categories, but it does tell us the actual videos. So here we're making an additional request or requests to the YouTube API to find out, well, how does YouTube actually categorize these particular videos? And so this is a step which ordinarily a researcher would have to sort of do manually or programmatically, and we're trying to sort of make this a bit more simplified. So we're doing this step for them. You can see this particular participant's really into music. That's sort of the dominant video category. We then have a look at sort of the frequent words in the video titles. So, we're sort of seeing sort of this music theme come in. We're sort of just displaying it in sort of a bit of a word cloud here just to get a sense of what's in those video titles. The DDP also contains your search history. So here, sort of showing, drum is obviously number one. And the last part is all about your subscribers. So in the DDP, it's basically just a list of the IDs of your subscribers. And again, we're making those additional requests to the YouTube API, sort of surface information about sort of, who are the subscribers you're following, how big are they, and so forth. So we have, you can imagine a similar thing for the second one. This one's just another synthetically generated sample, but it's a much younger account. So only sort of for 6 months. Similar sort of thing, a bit more sort of general, they're sort of more into education. You get the idea. And so you can imagine that having sort of, had a lot of people sort of submit the sort of DDPs, you'd have on here on the left-hand side, sort of a list of all your participants, all their DDPs. And then we have what we call sort of the aggregate view, where we're trying to actually, surface some similarities or differences between the DDPs being viewed, or sort of, accumulate the data together. So here we have, 2 packages, the total videos watched, the total subscriptions. We do the whole sort of categorization again. We look at sort of some shared interests in terms of the video titles and the occurrences within them. We're looking at sort of common search terms, like are there any particular terms which appear in both packages? And we do some similar sort of thing with the subscribers, and at the end, sort of showing some basic sort of stats around this as well. So this is our sort of YouTube viewer. The second one I'd like to show you is our sort of Instagram viewer. So this one, again, it's similar to YouTube, but as we've sort of been trying to explain, like the sort of data which Instagram provides to us actually does differ in some respects to YouTube. So we sort of had to sort of adjust our sort of modules to sort of meet what the platform provides. We're very much beholden to what the platform provides to us. So we do have sort of the time spent. Here we've sort of got a lot more information around sort of advertisements. So we can sort of see, this particular user saw 410 advertisements. Something which is quite interesting is that, as some of you would know, even if you're not actually active on Instagram, Meta can still receive sort of information about what you're doing on other websites or on apps, if they're using like the analytical or advertising tools provided by Meta. So that's what this events recorded of Meta platforms means. So just to give you an example, if you're on Instagram and you see, something for Nike, maybe you click on it, you go to Nike's website, you sort of purchase a pair of shoes there. Nike's website might actually send, some activity back to Meta, which would be sort of notionally called sort of a purchase event. And so what Meta does is it would sort of associate that activity with your account. And so we're seeing in the DDP, sort of there's 193 examples of this. It might not just be a purchase event, it might also be, just actually having gone to a website or many other things like that. So here in this sort of sample, we can see sort of the ads viewed per day. So quite a few ads here, getting up to sort of over 100 on some days. Looking at sort of like the ad authors who sort of is authoring these ads. A bit more about sort of the post viewed. So you can click on all these to actually go to the particular Instagram pages. And here we sort of show a bit of a graph related to those activity off Meta platforms. That's it for sort of the Instagram. The very last one is sort of our lab workspace. So remember, if we're looking at, something which is not Instagram or YouTube, well, this is sort of what we're offering right now, because we can't sort of target every platform. And this one's sort of a bit more sort of general. It's really, trying to sort of provide some sort of general and customizable sort of modules. So here we're looking at a sample of sort of some news articles and user comments from the federal election earlier this year, sort of a data set around that. And so here at the top, we've got sort of a barcode chart sort of showing, the occurrence of events over time. We then have sort of like a gallery module, which actually goes, looking at the data set and sort of pulling out, the stories, so pulling out the images within them, the titles, the story author, the description. All of this is customizable, so I can actually come here to my top right, click on this little cog. I can go in and actually dig into the data within this particular data set to sort of customize my gallery. Keep going through the gallery. We have, a general sort of word cloud where we can sort of, look at whatever thing here. We're sort of just showing the title and description of the various stories within the data set. We then have a sort of a tree map here. So this is a good example where, it's quite difficult here on the screen to sort of see this tree map. We're also providing, a way to sort of toggle it full screen. So now we can see for every, particular module, a bit more of an idea of what's going on. And here, I might change this to example to see, the various parties being discussed. So here we can see, the ALP and the NLP, and, none is still sort of the majority here. I'll close this up. So the final one's sort of like a table view. And you might think, well, someone might be able to do that in Excel. But the thing is that the types of, or the format of the files that the lab visualizer here works with are not necessarily tabular to begin with. Like we are doing some sort of harmonizations. This could be quite useful for researchers working with sort of file formats which they don't necessarily have, the tools in their computer to sort of analyze the data with. So in total for the lab, we actually have sort of 7 modules which we're developing or in the process of developing. So we have 3 which are still sort of in development stage, which are sort of actually trying to take advantage of LLMs. So we have one which is sort of like a data summarizer, one which is like a goal generator, trying to like surface some insights or goals you might want to explore in the data. One sort of like what we're calling a quick explorer, so you can sort of ask some questions about the data. And then we have sort of the visualizations, which we've shown here today. So a table view, a tree map, a gallery, and a barcode chart. I think the last thing I want to share with everyone is back to the slides. We've put together a little QR code here, and we really encourage you to sort of check this out. This is all, sorry.
Pop it on a slideshow if people can see.
This one here. Beautiful.
Yes, so you can try out the visualizers with our demo files or your own DDPs if you would like to go request those as well.
Yeah, and we'd really like to sort of, I guess, emphasize that we're not sort of collecting any of the data that you would submit here, or you can just use the samples. Actually, most of the tools I've shown you today, we're trying to do as much of the sort of analytical work actually in the browser. So it's not actually hitting the server particularly much at all.
That's right. We're not collecting anything.
Not collecting the data.
Right.
Marcel, thank you very much. Thank you.
We possibly have time for one very quick question. If we have anyone who want to have a quick one before we go to the next one. There you go.
You mentioned there's an end-to-end platform. I'm guessing after that you can then export it to some sort of standard way of this.
Do you want to do that? So yeah, sorry, I got my microphone here. So I think what we actually sort of are showing today is sort of towards the end of the process. So when we say end to end, like we're also sort of focusing also on the data collection side. So that's sort of what this discussion was this morning. But I guess to sort of answer your question, I guess, you know, once you've collected it, you might do some initial sort of analysis or exploration here. And then particularly for sort of power users who want to sort of use, you know, other tools, we'll have a way, you know, you can export, of course, that data out of our system to sort of use for those purposes. Yeah.
More to come.
More to come.
Lots more.
All righty. Thank you very much. Thank you.